Janet Szabo for Camas Yarn, and I'm going to demonstrate how to work Kitchener stitch. Kitchener stitch is also known as grafting, and it's used when you want to close the toe of a sock or the top of a mitten. It's a useful technique to learn, and we're going to learn how right now. What I'm going to do is make sure that my stitches are arranged on the needle. So on the top needle I've got 10 stitches, and on the bottom needle I also have 10 stitches. I've left the working yarn attached to the stitches on the top needle, and I've threaded it into a tapestry needle. To begin my Kitchener stitch, I'm going to come into the first stitch on the bottom needle as if to knit. And I like to take my stitch off the needle at that point. Sometimes you'll see directions that say to leave it on the needle, but I prefer to pop it off the needle. I'm going to come back up to the stitch on the top needle, and I'm going to come into that stitch as if to knit. And I'm also going to pop that off the needle and pull the yarn through. Here's where it gets a little tricky. I'm going to come back to that stitch that I popped off the bottom needle, and I'm going to come into the front of it. So you'll actually want to look for that stitch. It's right here. And I'm going to come into the front of it, and then I'm going to come into the back of the next stitch on the bottom needle as if to purl and pop it off. And I'll pull the yarn through there. Now I'm going to come back to the stitch from the upper needle that I popped off, come into the front of it, then go in as if to knit into the next stitch on the upper needle and pop it off and pull that through. And as I go along, I'm going to snug up my stitches there. So once again, I'm going to come to the stitch on the bottom needle that I popped off. I'm going to go into the front of it with the tapestry needle, come into the next stitch on the bottom needle as if to purl, pull the yarn through, then go back up to the stitch from the upper needle that I popped off, go into the front of it, into the next stitch on the upper needle as if to knit, pop it off, pull the yarn through, and I'll continue in that manner across the row. If you can see what I've done here, I've actually recreated a row of knit stitches where there wasn't one before, and I've joined this side of the fabric to this side of the fabric. So it looks like an unbroken line of knit stitches runs over the top of the fabric. So I've worked most of the way across the row, and you can see that what I have here looks like a row of knitting. To fasten this off, I'll finish the last couple of stitches. Remember, I'm going into the front of that stitch and then into the next stitch as if to knit. I'm going to pop it off the needle. I'm going to come down here and look for this stitch, come into the front of it, into the next stitch as if to purl, to the top, to the stitch that I popped off, into the front of that one, into the last stitch off that needle, pull it through, and then finally into the last stitch off the bottom needle and pull it through. At this point, I've completed my row of grafting, and I'm ready to darn in my end. Kitchener stitch is a magical technique. It's well worth learning, even though it takes a little practice. Once you've mastered it though, you'll be able to amaze your friends by closing the tops of your mittens and the toes of your socks and making it look like an unbroken line of knitting. Be sure to check out our other technique videos at camascreekyarn.com. Thanks for watching. This technique and many others are detailed in my book, The I Hate to Finish Sweaters Guide to Finishing Sweaters. It's available at Camas Creek Yarn and can be ordered from camascreekyarn.com. I'm Janet Szabo of Big Sky Knitting Designs. Thanks for watching.